People love scary movies, and there's no better time to watch them than on Halloween. Why is it, though, that we love to scream out in fright anytime something terrible happens on screen in a horror movie? In this video, we'll take a look at some of the psychological research, and I promise this is the last scream I'm going to put in the video. To begin, though, let's ask a different question. To get a sense of why people like scary movies, let's take a look at the research on who likes scary movies. First, the data show that men like scary movies more than women. It just happens to be a gender difference that in this case is reliable. But why would it be that guys like scary movies more than girls? What's the underlying psychological effect there? Well, some have suggested that this is consistent with other research on socialization processes. A lot of gender differences really just come down to how kids are raised and the different expectations that are put in front of them. And one of those things might be that boys are discouraged from showing emotion, and girls maybe are more encouraged to do so. So some psychologists have suggested that scary movies provide a proving ground where boys can prove their masculinity by not being affected by these films. And so by being able to take what would otherwise be a negative experience and change it into a positive one based on all the things society expects of you, men may be more likely to enjoy that process. Number 2, people who are more afraid during scary movies like those movies more, which might sound a little crazy, right? It might seem like the people who are the least afraid like them more, but it turns out that something about being afraid is part of the experience that's enjoyable. And in particular, it seems that it's the people who can feel afraid and then also view that fear as a positive are the most likely to enjoy scary movies. Number 3, people who have less empathy like scary movies more. And the idea behind this is that the more empathy you feel for characters in a scary movie, the more uncomfortable an experience it is to be constantly distressed on behalf of the characters in the movie. Again, it turns out that it's harder to view the fear that you get while watching a scary movie as positive if you're constantly empathizing with the characters who are getting their limbs torn off, which is a nice thing. Number 4, people who are more sensation-seeking like horror films more. Sensation-seeking is just a personality variable that has to do with things like enjoying high-risk gambling and jumping out of airplanes. People who are more likely to like those things are also more likely to like scary movies. So there you go. Finally, how old do you have to be to appreciate a scary movie? Well, it turns out that young adulthood is right in the sweet spot. When you look at kids, for example, the older kids get, the more interested they become in scary movies. The idea being that as you get older, the more able you are to experience negative emotions and then reconstrue them as being actually a positive experience. It's harder for younger kids to do that. But once you hit young adulthood, you hit a leveling off period, where according to the data, on average, adults after young adulthood are less and less interested in scary movies. So if you're a low empathy, sensation-seeking 20-something-year-old male, then congratulations! Go onto Netflix and watch whatever the scariest movie they have is. But really what we learn from these patterns is that we can understand why people like scary movies by knowing more about who likes scary movies. And it seems to come down to this core process of being able to watch something scary that otherwise is negative, but doing it in a safe enough environment that you can reconstrue that negative experience as a positive. Alright, well that does it for another installment of Halloween Psychology. If you want to know more about scary movies and what makes them enjoyable, go ahead and click on this link right here to be taken to a full blog post with all the details. And if you want to know more about psychology in general, go ahead and click on this link right here to know more about general things in psychology. Next time, we'll talk about a study with more trick-or-treaters, more stealing of candy, but a cool little wrinkle. And until then, happy Halloween.